You mentioned working on your ears, and you actually have perfect pitch or absolute pitch, as they say, right? And I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you about that. Is that something you've always known you've had, or did it just, or did you do you consciously remember learning the pitches?
Well, so my memory is kind of hazy on this. I think I remember it just barely, but let me backtrack a little bit and tell you that I had some very weird behaviors as a child, as a baby. My parents didn't know like what was going on, and it was all sound related. If my parents would flush the toilet with the lid up instead of down, I would start crying.
Wait, how old were you?
Or if I had, like, I'm talking like an infant.
Oh, wow.
Like I was an infant. And and also, like, if I, they have, the kids have those toys that, that make noise and all that stuff. When I would play with these little toys that you could push buttons on and they would make noise and stuff, I would play with them for a while. And then after a while I would play with it and it wouldn't sound right, I guess, but nobody understood that, but me. So I would play with it for a while, and then I would get really mad one day after playing with it, and I would like scream and cry and throw it and never touch it again.
Wait, why was that?
And my mom never understood what was going on, and so as I got older, these behaviors continued to, sort of manifest themselves, and they started noticing that I was just really sensitive to, different sounds and things like that. And so, and I had, like a natural, ear for, it seemed like I had a natural ear for music and stuff like that. I could sing along with different things and sing, pretty well.
Was your mom making you listen to Mozart, like when you were in the womb or anything? What was happening?
Honestly, I don't think my parents did anything different. But that was the other thing, Nick. I guess I was destined to be a classical musician because they would put on different radio stations. Mm. And when they would put on the classical station, I was the happiest. Like when I was a baby. And if so they would put on like the country station or like the the 60s Coltrane, where it's just drum and saxophone. Right. I don't think they. My parents. Oh my gosh, my parents. They don't know what to do with all that stuff. So they would put on the classical station, and I was the happiest. And then they would put on like the country station or like the like a rock station, and I would get really mad and start crying and stuff. So they didn't know what the hell was going on with me. And so my dad, when I was about 4, and I was getting better at talking and that communicating and that sort of thing, my dad was wondering if I had perfect pitch and if that's why I was doing all this stuff. So he took me outside on the porch and he's like, I want to show you what notes are and what the note names are. And so he was a guitar player, and he sat there and played all 12 notes, and then he played all major chords and all minor chords from what I can remember. And then he asked me, he would play something and say, okay, what's this? He'd like played a game with me and was like, what is this? And I got every note, every chord correctly, apparently, like right on the first try.
Did he have perfect pitch as well?
No. Mm-mm, no.
Wow.
Neither one of them do. Neither one of my parents had perfect pitch. Nope. And so my dad was like, you have perfect pitch. This is like a special ability that you have.
And so, how did you find yourself playing the trumpet? And when did you start playing the trumpet? Do you have to be a certain age to play the trumpet for your breath? To hold a big breath to blow into the trumpet?
Yeah, I don't think you have to be a certain age. The standard age for, playing trumpet and stuff like that in this country is sixth grade. So roughly, between 11 and 12.
Oh.
But there are kids that start when they're 7. There are kids that start when they're 8. There are kids that start when they're 9 or 10.
Would you say 11 and 12 is relatively old if you compare it to like the violin and the piano?
Oh, for sure. Oh my gosh. I mean, you got kids who are like 2 and 3 years old, playing, violin, working on their Suzuki, and you've got kids who are, 3 and 4 years old, learning the piano, some of them younger than that too. No, the trumpet, you definitely need to have some, some of your permanent teeth coming in. You need to have a stable, you need to have a stable mouth situation going on, and you need to be able to, have the strength to not only hold the instrument, but, have the breath support that it needs to, be able to make the notes happen. But standard age in public schools in the United States is 6th grade, typically.
And, sorry, when did you start again?
I was in 6th grade. I was in 6th grade band when I started.
Were you doing music before then?
Well, I didn't really. My parents didn't really, put a lot of pressure on me as a child to, get into music. I kind of wish maybe that. I don't know if they.
Maybe that's good, actually. It kind of gives.
Yeah, I kind of had some attention span issues, and
then you tend to do things for love and interest instead of being compelled, right?
Right. And I think my parents, wanted me to kind of get through some, developmental issues I was kind of having as a kid and that sort of thing. And so when I was in 4th grade, I took violin lessons for 3 months. I decided that I wanted to learn the violin. And that was a horrible disaster.
How so?
And I mean, I hated the way it made my fingers feel. I hated the calluses. It was like
Is Wayne Pearcy ever going to play the guitar then?
Oh no! Oh God, no! Oh, definitely not! Oh no!
I read
no stringed instruments for me.
I have an Art Tatum biography I bought, Too Marvelous for Words, and it said there, it was one story. He was talking to one of the people in the band. I think a guitar player is like, "Hey man, teach me how to play guitar." And the guitarist is like, I'm struggling with my instrument as it is. The last thing I want is Art Tatum to pick up this guitar and put me out of work, So kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
But he said Art Tatum. He got him to stop because he said you have to cut your nails, and Art Tatum apparently had long nails, so he said, "Oh, I'm not going to cut my nails." But yeah, imagine Art Tatum on guitar.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, really I want to keep going with this. I'm very fascinated on your development because actually, that's the thing I like the most about musical biographies, the development, that crucial period of learning where you're obsessively practicing and getting better and better. So you picked up the trumpet, and then what happened? How did you develop?
Well, I did what every other kid does in the United States anyway. I went through school band and started learning, the stuff out of the beginning band book. And we had these, it was really funny. We had these assignments, they were called playoffs, and they wanted you to play all of these things in the band book. And I remember skipping lunch every day in 6th grade because I was so hell bent on getting through these assignments.
That is determination. That's good. Oh wow, that's great.
And my band directors, I got through line, 120 or something like that, and they're like, "Wayne, can you stop coming in here because you need to eat and you're really skinny and you need to go get food."
So these are band charts. Are they jazz big band, or are they military marching band?
No, they're not. No.
They're
basically miniature little etudes. There's a book, you can look it up. It's called The Standard of Excellence.
Okay.
And that's where the there's different levels, and we were working on the first level of the Standard of Excellence book. And that was really funny. They were very I was pretty much in that school. I was the most serious student they had, and I was very serious.
Right,
and
right.
Like I just,
did you have did you have a private instructor separately outside of school?
I did not, actually. I didn't have a private teacher until I got to high school.
Wow. So we're saying, so would you say, what years was high school the period where you kind of exploded in? I mean, you were dead serious before, but talent-wise, did you feel like you had gone to the next level in high school?
I was definitely more refined in high school, yeah, for sure. And I definitely, smoothed out a lot of rough edges. My middle school, experience, I mean, I was, far ahead of the other students. And I progressed really rapidly and honestly probably needed a private teacher much sooner. So when I got to high school, and the band program was a lot more competitive, and there were a lot more serious kids there too, that could actually really pull their own weight. My band director had to work with me on, things like playing softer, using softer articulations, that sort of thing. Because I was used to just dragging a whole trumpet section through things,
blasting through, right?
And so. I was a really rough player when I got to high school, really aggressive, really just really loud. And so she had to help me smooth out a lot of those rough edges and actually make me sound like a convincing classical trumpet player, And she was a trumpet player too, so that helped a lot.
Was it all classical up to that point, or had you been listening to jazz? When were you introduced to jazz?
I started playing jazz in the middle school jazz band, so 7th grade. But the thing about it, I wasn't really listening to, they didn't tell me, what to go listen to. They didn't tell me, you need to go listen to, Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. You need to go listen to, Charlie Parker. You need to go do this and do that and do this and do that. It was more the way, jazz band typically works is that, you kind of go in and you get charts. They have really easy little arrangements that they give you that are, not range intensive or anything like that. They give you that sort of thing. And you sit there and you play through them, and then they say, okay, who wants to pick a solo? Who wants to take a solo at this spot? And then everyone goes, oh, pick me. And I was one of the kids that did that.
So you were improvising back then. Did you know how to improvise?
I was, but I didn't have any sort of nobody gave me any sort of theoretical. Nobody sort of gave me any theoretical this or that, do this over this chord and do that over this chord. And it was all by feel, and it was all by just reacting to the changes. I mean, they explained to us the 12-bar blues, but that was about all they did.
Were you
for jazz band, for a lot of the kids in public school programs, and not all of them, but most of them, it's more about reading and ensemble playing than it is soloing.
Were you aware of trumpet famous players at that point, or were you just kind of following the curriculum?
No, I didn't know anything. I did not know a thing. I'd never heard classical trumpet soloists before. I'd never heard jazz soloists before. I really, really did not know anything. And since my parents weren't into jazz or classical music either, they didn't really know how to guide me in that direction either. So it wasn't until high school that I got into band in high school and found out about Wynton Marsalis. Wynton Marsalis was the first classical / jazz soloist I'd ever heard of.
That's a great introduction to jazz, Wynton Marsalis. He's great.
Yeah. Yeah, Wynton.
So you're saying he was the first. He was the very first.
He was.
Okay.
But I didn't hear him play jazz first. I heard him play classical first.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My band director burned me a compilation disc and it had 4 of his cornet solos on it. It had the Carnival of Venice, and it had that's the Arbin version for any trumpet players out there listening. It's the Arbin version of the Carnival of Venice. You can find that on the Carnival CD, which is Eastman Wind Ensemble with Donald Hansberger conducting. That would have been 1983, 1984, somewhere in there. And then there was another tune called Napoli, or I think it's also called Theme and Variations on a Neapolitan Song or something like that. It's another one of the cornet solos, one of the big ones in the literature. Flight of the Bumblebee was on there. Ooh. And then this other piece called Moto Repetuo.
Quick question. I've played that a little bit on guitar, and when you're playing that on trumpet, do you have to do a certain kind of breathing to get through those just lots of notes at a pace?
Not for that one, but I was going to mention Moto Repetuo was the next piece on the list on the disc.
Is that Paganini's piece, one? The Paganini?
That piece, is that Paganini? I don't know.
I think I've heard Wynton Marsalis play that, right? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where he's doing circular breathing.
Just a question for
That's where he's doing.
I'm sure
breathing.
non-trumpet wind players. Is it hard to do circular breathing?
I still can't do it. I still can't do it.
Is it?
I still haven't figured it out. I had Wynton work with me on it one time. We worked on it a little bit together, and I need to sit with that man for like a month. I really just do. I need to hang out with Wynton for like a month.
You did
straight.
Though. You took lessons.
I think that would be very beneficial. But we did work on it a little bit. He gave me some things to try, but I couldn't quite. It didn't quite happen.
Okay, wait, hold on a second. We're gonna get to that in a minute. I'm very because I know you took lessons with Wynton Marsalis. But let's finish up high school then. So you were competing with other kids, and you started to listen to Wynton Marsalis playing classical, but not jazz.
Right, and I found out. Well, so the next semester. Oh, I was going to tell you. Sorry, on that CD, there was also a recording of the Haydn trumpet concerto, and there was also the Hummel trumpet concerto, which those two are like really important pieces of the trumpet repertoire. And so it was good that I got
this
exposed.
This is Johann Nepomuk Hummel, right? Johann, he's the contemporary of Beethoven.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah. He's an important guy. I know for a fact that Chopin loved his piano concerto. So he's a serious composer, and not enough people know who he is.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Apparently a good improviser. Yeah, apparently a good improviser too.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. I am sure of that.
So, were you working on those concertos?
So I did the first movement of the Haydn for Texas State solo and ensemble competition. I did it for region, and then I went on to state. And cool. I got superior ratings in both of those. Actually, no, wait. No, wait. Let me take that back. I did a different solo for regionals. Yeah, okay. And then I went on to state, and I did the Haydn. I did the first movement of Haydn my freshman year of high school. But I've never performed the Haydn in its entirety. Nor have I actually performed the Hummel in its entirety. I pretty well know both of them all the way through. But I've never actually performed both of them.
Make it happen, Wayne. We want to hear it.
Yeah, I know. I want to hear it too.
Okay, so high school after high school, is it straight to Berkeley? I still haven't found a jazz connection though yet.
Right. So I guess I was still doing jazz band in high school. I was still doing jazz band in high school, and I started getting to know some of Wynton's, jazz recordings, my second semester of high school, so like the second half of my freshman year. And, it's kind of funny because I didn't really think about it. I didn't really think about how, like, didn't really think about that people would choose one or the other. You know, I just sort of thought like everybody was supposed to do both.
Describe some of the differences between jazz trumpet playing and classical trumpet playing.
Well, classical trumpet playing, which is, of course, the ideal of the instrument and the ideal of the tradition. You're going for a very pure sound. You want a nice centered core to the sound. It can be round and it can be warm. It can even be a little bit on the darker side, but it should be pure and it should ring. It should really, really, really ring. And when you cut off that note, you should just hear a little bit of a taper after that note ends. You should really hear that note ring. You want to feel the horn vibrating in your hands. You want to feel that instrument, you know, talking to you. You really want to feel that. If you wake up in the morning and you can't get a pure sound on your instrument, you need to do exercises and you need to, you know, be able to center yourself and really, you know, get that to work. And for jazz sounds are really they're very colored, like a lot of air behind the sound, very fluffy articulations, you know, things like you can even use syllables like you know, like the doodle tonguing, like Clark Terry would do, or you can, you know, ghost notes with kind of like a TH articulation, you know, like different things like that. There's so many different things you can do with jazz. The problem with a lot of jazz trumpet players is that they don't spend enough time in the classical tradition. They don't spend enough time doing the classical rhetoric. So when they really try to push their sounds don't really want to do anything other than the fluffy thing, because they haven't really made their chops conditioned enough to do that. And so their sounds are very, they can be very one-dimensional instead of a three-dimensional sound, which would make your sound very flexible and make it easy to control.
Wayne, when did you start to improvise in a very, I'd say, conscious, intellectually selective manner?
Honestly, Nick, such a hard question to answer, honestly. Because I do things so much by feel, and I just am so reactive to what's going on around me.
Yeah, that's a good response.
I think, you know, obviously the theory has helped me a lot, but I would think that I started sounding more like an actual real jazz musician, you know, after I, you know, started, you know, coming to Berkeley and really getting in touch with a lot of that, you know, a lot of that theory and
were you listening to the records of Wynton playing jazz and maybe copying some of the lines and trying to play them?
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. I was, and I was doing that in high school. But, you know, again, the only jazz experience that I had in high school was, you know, playing in the big bands and, you know, the high school big bands and stuff like that, and soloing over, you know, over charts that we had. And we actually did in high school, we did some bigger things. Like we did, you know, Basie, and we did some Ellington and stuff like that. But there was still none of this small group approach. Like I didn't start doing small group jazz until, you know, really like, you know, getting into a combo until Berkeley.
So what you're saying is in the small combo, that's when you really have to, do a lot more playing, I guess, more, in a more expanded situation.
Right. Absolutely. And that's when you really get to really start developing your voice. Because a lot of times in big bands, you know, they have the solo sections and things like that arranged, like, and they'll say like, oh, you know, you can only take 2 choruses, you know, over this tune, and then there's backgrounds, and you're going to solo over the backgrounds, and then you're going to take the head out and all that stuff. But a young player who is learning to improvise, they need to take like 20 choruses. they need to take 30 choruses. You know, like they need to get inside of their playing, and really they need to get inside of what they're doing, and really get the feel of their voice, and start trying to apply players that they're listening to.
So Wayne, let me get very technical now. So I mean, as much as I can be, at least as much as I can be. So let's take a blues, for instance, like an F blues, right? And let's say it's medium to up tempo. Now you say you go by feel. So okay, let's say you're the first to solo, and maybe the head is Billy's bounce, so just very common, right? So Billy's bounce. So how do you just right now, how would you think if you were placed in this position? How would you solo? What's your thought process?
Honestly, I would just start playing and see where it goes.
Well, let's try and narrow it down a little bit. So, do you get more complex harmonically as the choruses progress, or do you start off slow, or do you go in with a bang and start to do some heavy?
I usually try to. Depending on the situation, it depends on. A lot of times, it depends on what your rhythm section is doing. If the drummer is being pretty straight, just giving you some nice time underneath, and the pianist and the bass player are pretty relaxed. You can be, fairly relaxed. I think that tune in particular doesn't necessarily call for, you to just go in and do the whole Freddie Hubbard thing. That's a good
insight. Yeah, I like that.
To act like you're a boxer and start hitting people in the face,
Right.
So, I mean, I think it really depends on what your rhythm section is giving you, what you're going to end up doing,
When you were building your field, do you have, so to speak, a large vocabulary that you draw on? And do you draw it from other players, or have you over the years crafted your own vocabulary that you feel is very personal to you?
I think I've kind of crafted my own vocabulary. I think obviously that I've drawn a good bit from Wynton, especially when it comes to lyricism and expression. I've drawn a good bit from Wynton. I've drawn a little bit from Freddie. Wynton and Freddie are probably my top two, which are they're kind of opposites in some way, but I kind of have drawn from both of them a little bit.
If you were to teach a young kid who's coming to you and says, like, Wayne, I love jazz. Okay, where do I start? Like, what do you want that kid to do to get to improve his improvisational ability?
The blues. You have to start with the blues.
Okay.
Have to.
So what does that mean? Way. Are you gonna ask him to cop licks off famous records?
Nope.
So what's your approach to teaching?
I'm gonna put on a recording, and I'm gonna take a chorus, and then I'm gonna say, "All right, your turn."
Okay. What if he knows nothing?
Right, exactly. Because what I want you to do as a student is I want you to get the feeling of just letting go and just playing, taking the risk. I want you to have that internal feeling of, I've got to think about what I'm playing. If that makes any sense. I want you to have the freedom to make a decision without any sort of prior influence.
Okay.
That's and the reason I am so, the reason I'm so adamant about this is I've seen too many classical trumpet players, and I've seen a few come through Berklee, and they have all this theory thrown at them, but when you tell them to, so they understand the harmony and they've got it in their ear, I really do think they do. But when you ask them to solo, they just totally shut down. And the reason they shut down is because they can't feel it. They can't feel the music.
Will you tell them, like, okay, it's an F, play the F dominant scale or the F blues scale? Is that maybe they have absolutely no clue? They'll have to start somewhere?
I might get into that a little bit with them later, but I don't really want to tell them much of anything. Like once they first start, I want them to just have the experience of that really, primitive feeling of just putting the horn up to their face and making music, making something come out, whether it sounds good or whether it sounds bad. Just react to what you're hearing and start playing. And then we can get into parameters. If you give, especially somebody who's been who's been studying classical trumpet for a number of years, if you were to give them a set of parameters, they're used to parameters anyway because of the reading what's on a page and reading what the composer wrote and playing that. So if you were to give a classical trumpet player a set of parameters like that, what they would do is probably more than likely they would stick to those parameters only, and it might take them months to get away from that set of parameters because that's what you taught them the first time.
Right. It's very interesting, and I think it's a very freeing exercise. I think it's so.
That's what.
Do you put on like a backing track?
That's what I did.
Do you put on a backing track?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd give them like an Ebersold. I'd give them an Ebersold, and I'd do call and response too. I would do a lot of call and response too. So after they would play a couple of choruses, I would get into they play a phrase, I play a phrase, they play a phrase, I play a phrase. Very, very like reactive, like being able to recall like what you're.
So like 2 bars or 4 bars.
Yeah, probably like 2 bars. Yeah,
2 bars.
Like 2 bars, something really simple, and then just start building from there. Because it's a language. It's not just a music. It's a language. And so you want, and jazz is an oral tradition first.
Right.
Jazz is an oral tradition first. The theory and all of that, how does this function over this chord? How does this function over that chord? All of that comes later. That comes after you get to where you can feel it. If you can't feel it, you don't have anywhere to go.
I have a fun thing to do now. I have a fun thing. I want to see if I want you now, as an advocate for the trumpet family, I'm going to say a name of a famous trumpeter. I want you to give me 2 or 3 descriptive sentences, just the best you can for that trumpet player. Okay? Shall we try it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, Louis Armstrong.
Oh man, loud, bold, very, but also very extremely lyrical. Wonderful, wonderful ambassador for the tradition. Just all around beautiful player and strength, a lot of strength, a lot of just sheer strength.
Fats Navarro.
Oh, Fats Navarro. Fats is interesting because he's, obviously he's sort of I kind of view him as sort of the alternative, it's kind of the yin and yang to Dizzy Gillespie. He doesn't play as high. His sound is a little bit warmer, a little bit rounder. His tunes, I think, are a little bit not overly so, but a little bit more on the mellow end of the spectrum. Yeah, very, very, also very, very good player.
Then I guess on the flip side, let's do Dizzy Gillespie then, because you mentioned him.
Another really loud, really bold player. Funny, really, really funny, like a total clown on stage. Like if you hear all those old recordings, you can hear him just going like, ah! And like when Bird does something cool, like he just goes like crazy and he's like dancing around and stuff like that. He's just like so cool, but like super, super creative, super, super inventive. Lots of really brilliant ideas.
All his tunes are great. Dizzy Gillespie. He just writes. He's just a great, fantastic. Okay, Miles Davis.
Miles, depressed. Very depressed, very detached at times from his instrument. One of the things that really honestly bothers me about Miles Davis, coming from a classical perspective, is his lack of attention to pedagogical techniques and things about the instrument that he just clearly just neglects. Like his I'm speaking in trumpet pitch. One of the things that really annoys me is his E's and his E flats and D's, C sharps. They're always just flat as hell, and they're by nature on the instrument they're flat. Those are flat notes,
that's
but you've got to lift them up.
Well, that's
got to lift them up.
Can I do a little bit of a quick question? C sharp and D flat, they don't sound the same. Is that right?
I think I said E flat.
But just a general question, you know.
I think not D flat.
I think most people, most non perfect pitch people, they just assume that the black keys, the C sharp, D flat, F sharp, G flat, they assume they're the same pitch, but is that not necessarily so?
When we're dealing with mean tone temperament, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. There were organs in the Baroque era that would actually trigger, and I don't know a ton about this yet. I'm still learning about it, but they would actually trigger different, so like if you were playing G and then you would go down to G flat, that would be flatter than if that G flat would be flatter than if you would go from F to F sharp. So mean tone temperament actually does have a variance between sharp and flat. So it really depends on, what tuning system you're working in. With the well-tempered system, there's not any difference. I mean, okay. I guess if you're a horn player, you might approach those notes just a little bit differently, but it would be kind of a subconscious thing because you're either going down or you're going up.
Okay.
But when we're talking about Miles and his notes not being in tune, that's just laziness. That's not an anticipation of anything. That's just incorrect technique. And it's lazy and it's amateur.
I think at the end.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I have strong opinions, and I think everyone should stand by your conviction. I think that's the most important thing. I actually read his biography, and that great drummer Tony Williams was complaining to him, "Man, you should practice more." And he's like, "Man, leave me alone." That was pretty fun.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, let's keep going.
Exactly.
What about?
I mean, there were recordings, and that's the other thing about Miles is that there were recordings where he was just on, like really on, and you were just like, okay, like, all right, this is cool. And then you'd listen to another recording 5 minutes later, and you're like, dude, like, why did you go into the studio today exactly? Like, what was that for? So it's funny because people.
What would be really cool, Wayne, is if you came on again and we could talk about specific recordings.
Yeah, for sure. And
okay, let's go. How about
Miles rant? So it's okay.
How about Donald Byrd?
I am sorry to say this, but I haven't listened to enough Donald Byrd to really give you much on the subject.
What about Lee Morgan?
Oh, another powerhouse, but also, really, lyrical. And he kind of him and Freddie have some similarities where they kind of, they hit notes like in a really, really hard way. And the articulation is so hard that it makes the horn crack a little bit, makes the trumpet, crack a little bit. And it almost seems like someone's like punching you, with a like a boxer, coming up and just giving you a right hook square in the jaw. It's just like very violent, very street playing, very brash.
What about Nat Adderley?
Nat Adderley.
Yeah, Nat Adderley. Sorry.
Yeah, kind of in the middle. I would say, he can be kind of that more aggressive playing, kind of that aggressive camp, like Freddie and Lee Morgan. I think, I don't know, from what I've heard, and I haven't heard every single recording of his, but he seemed to have a few more. He seemed to have maybe a few chop issues, some chop problems, and so maybe he wasn't able to get quite as loud as Freddie and Lee Morgan. He also played the cornet. I don't know if you know that, so that also contributes to his more mellower sound, because he didn't actually play the trumpet; he played the cornet.
What about let's go to Brownie, Clifford Brown. I like this guy a lot.
Oh my God, Clifford, Jesus! Probably one of the best trumpet players of anyone's generation, and again, great, right? Somebody who had a classical teacher and who actually did things the right way. Who actually, spent time with his, tradition and got his sound to ring.
I know that I think he was recuperating from some illness or something. Charlie Parker visited him in a hospital and said, "Man, you play really well," and I mean, I think I read in Bud Powell's biography, they were saying that you should check out this guy, Clifford Brown. He's the only guy who could probably outplay him is Dizzy Gillespie, and I don't know. They're both great in my opinion. I mean, if that's very high praise, very high praise.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, Clifford. The thing about Clifford and Clifford and Wynton both have this in common. Actually, they can both float across phrases, very lightly float across phrases. A lot of jazz musicians try to dig into the notes,
right,
and make them heavier. Or and sometimes that even makes the pitch go down a little bit. And for some jazz musicians, they try to do it because it's kind of it's kind of the thing to do, I guess, for a lot of people. But it may not exactly be your voice, and so some people, when they try to, you may not be able to handle it. So some people, when they try to dig into those notes really, really hard, instead of trying to just float across them, they end up not being able to get all their content out because they're too busy trying to stab everything.
Okay, let's keep going. How about let's talk about him. Let's talk about Freddie Hubbard.
Oh, Freddie, one of my I guess because maybe my ear is always like so analytical. I don't know, but like I rarely cry when I hear music, but Freddie Hubbard has almost made me do that a few times. Like I listened to his. There's something, even though I don't play that way, the way he plays, like I just, there's something really deep that hits me when I listen to Freddie Hubbard. And he's another one who's got that really, like I was talking about, like who can just hit you with a right hook square in the jaw, like just boom, you're there, like that's it, But he, he's also in his own way, he's also very, can be very lyrical. Right. His vibrato is really exaggerated, kind of sometimes. It's very slow, and you can really hear the waves, or like they're kind of big, bigger waves of vibrato. It's not a faster, more operatic approach like Wynton, more of a classical vibrato. But Freddie, and even on ballads, he would throw in a few of his really crazy, aggressive phrases. Freddie was always, even being a lyrical player, he had his tender moments, but he was always, I think, very on the aggressive side. Like those notes just hit you square in the chest, and he had like a very large, especially when he was in his prime, before his chops gave out on him, he really had a lot of presence in his sound and a lot of clarity, and I think a lot more than most of the jazz trumpet players that you'd see out there. Had a lot of clarity.
How about Chet Baker?
Chet Baker is another. Chet Baker is his sense of lyricism is very. It's very uncanny. It's very good, and he's absolutely, when he sings, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like wonderment. It's
he's
like
such a good singer, right? He's a good singer.
The beauty in his singing is just, I mean, it's just fantastic. Yeah. It's like you can get lost in it. It's like so beautiful. And what's really cool about Chet is that he plays the way he sings. He plays the way he sings, but he's another player who he had a lot of chop issues, a lot of technical things that were kind of amiss about his playing, and so he pretty much had to stay on microphone the whole time. If he didn't, like, his sound would just fall to the floor and die. He didn't really have a lot of range, especially later in his later life. He really just didn't have that much range, and he was a guy that who really couldn't push his sound very much. He kind of had his zone that he worked in and really couldn't get out of that.
Arturo Sandoval.
Oh my gosh, Arturo. Arturo, another like speed demon, like totally like technically just really amazing, beautiful player. Very much, you can definitely tell he's from Cuba. No matter what he's playing, you can always tell that there's that Cuban, that Latin influence there.
Yeah.
Even when he plays classical music, you can hear that. But he's another guy who's completely aware of the tradition and who knows about how to approach the trumpet in the right way, and he understands all the classical rhetoric and all of that stuff. And he's got the range of Maynard Ferguson, and it's crazy. But his solos are good. His improvisation is very, like, his ideas are impeccable, and he's really good at transcribing. I don't know if you've heard his album Trumpet Evolution.
No.
It's actually pretty cool. He like copies a lot of the historic iconic jazz legends and their most iconic recordings. Like he does Joy Spring by Clifford Brown. He does Up Jump. Wait, does he do Up Jump Spring by Freddie Hubbard? I can't remember specifically. He does a couple New Orleans tunes, like When It's Sleepy Time Down South. He does the Concerto for Cootie thing, and he does the Bunny Berrigan solo from I Can't Get Started. So he does a lot of really cool stuff, and it's kind of cool that he's showing us, hey, like, yeah, I'm a Latin trumpet player, but like I have all this tradition behind me too.
Okay, how about Kenny Dorham?
Kenny Dorham, interesting way of articulating phrases. Definitely interesting way of approaching lip bends. Kind of using the tongue to kind of direct the air in different places, so it kind of makes his sound kind of thin out a little bit. I think Kenny, his high A's were really flat a lot, and I don't really know if that was just because he fingered them, used an alternate fingering a lot, or if it was because he just had trouble getting up there sometimes. Sometimes I feel like when he, like, what ballad was it? Was it You Don't Know What Love Is? He played very high on the instrument, and I felt like like he was almost struggling in a way to get through it, and I wish he had just played lower, because I thought it would have, like, or changed the key so that he could play lower and really be, more tender. He's more of I think Kenny is more of a tender trumpet player. He's not quite as aggressive as someone like, Freddie. He's sort of between those two camps. He's not like in the super aggressive camp, but he's also, he can kind of get into that Chet Baker zone just a little bit with his tender playing, lyricism.
Clark Terry,
I think, is one of the most underrated trumpet players of all time. I think Clark Terry needs to be talked about 20 times more than he actually is.
Why is that?
Clark Terry, I don't know, to be honest. I really don't know. I think maybe did he not? It's hard to say. I feel like maybe did he not have a lot of original compositions? I don't know what the thing is, but I feel like he's just overshadowed by Dizzy Gillespie, which is really kind of kind of interesting because, they were both active around the same time. And, Clark was obviously, big soloist for Duke Ellington. And he always has really cool tricks up his sleeve that you really just don't hear trumpet players always doing. Like he, does lip bends like on a lot of different parts of the instrument. And he, has like, different, I feel like his vocabulary is a little bit different, and it seems kind of like he approaches muted playing a little bit differently than a lot of people. Like, a lot of people, when they play with mutes, they try to do kind of a straight tone, sort of the starker, like kind of Miles Davis sort of thing. But really, like, Clark uses the mute as just another way of just expressing who he is naturally. Clark always sounds really happy when he plays. He sounds like he's just sitting there having a good time and having a big party and laughing and joking around with people. And Clark, if you're not aware of it, Clark is also one of these guys who was a big mentor to young people. And he actually mentored a blind pianist, Justin Coughlin, who actually has a guide dog from the same school that I have my dog from, Seeing Eye.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a documentary that he did with Justin Coughlin, and it's called "Keep On Keeping On."
Right.
And I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really, really, really amazing. It's a beautiful story. It really is a beautiful story.
The last person is Wynton Marsalis. Go.
Wynton, my number one favorite trumpet player. As I said to you earlier, Wynton was somebody who played both classical and jazz, and really, in my opinion, has set the bar for the rest of us to be able to extensively explore both styles and be aware of the tradition. And Wynton can do anything. Wynton can play aggressive. Wynton can play lyrically. Wynton can play, the command and the authority over the trumpet that Wynton Marsalis has is unmatched by anyone else. And Wynton's doing a lot of the Lincoln Center stuff now, and so he's not actually. Yeah. I think Wynton.
I like the
Wynton's not up doing his full potential right now, and that's not a problem because he's already shown us that, like, he's already proved all that to us.
Yeah.
He's already proved himself to all of us. He's just kind of like, all right, and he's another one who's really taken a lot of young people and really, been a positive mentor. And he's really true to the tradition, and he respects the history of the music, and he understands what tradition can do for you as a player. And
right.
And that to me is sheer beauty, and I will always have a special place in my heart for Wynton.
He's great. He's definitely great,
especially his classical playing.
Okay, very, very briefly for classical, is there a classical player or two that is of definite note to anybody?
Some of the best ones are Wynton's right up there.
Okay.
Maurice André.
Maurice André, okay.
You gotta spend some time with Maurice André. There's another guy named Håkan Hardenberger, and Håkan is interesting because while he's very good he's good at the standard rep. His thing is more the cutting edge, very contemporary, very abstract classical playing. He sounds better doing that stuff than he does the standard rep.
Wow.
But he's got a huge sound, and I've seen him play with the Boston Symphony. I saw him play the Turnage trumpet concerto with the BSO, and that was just really brilliant. He's a really good player.
Great.
And then you've got, let's see, so Wynton, Timmofey Dokshizer. You need to get some Eastern European trumpet playing in your blood, more of that aggression, that really totalitarian approach to the instrument. So looking at a lot of the Russian works is something that I think all trumpet players should do. Timmofey Dokshizer is amazing. Sergei Nakaryakov is another good classical trumpet player from that part of the world. That is of note. And then, from the historical performance side, you've got players like Nicholas Eklund, who everybody needs to listen to. Nick Eklund. He's just absolutely, just stunning what he can do with that instrument.
I want Wayne to ask you one quick question. If you have perfect pitch, how does that affect learning relative pitch?
I'm not sure, because that's an interesting question. Because learn it. If you have perfect pitch, I'm not really sure why you would need to go back and learn.
I guess my question is
why you would need to.
If you hear a progression and if you hear the bass notes moving, can you feel that relative pull from, like, let's say if you're going from a C to an A minor, do you feel that feeling of that 1 to a 6 minor sound? You feel like anybody, right?
Yeah, you feel that. Yeah. You feel it.
You feel it. So
but you also know what the notes are too.
So, but
it's
my question is,
I think I see where this is going.
Yeah,
I think I see where this is going.
My question is, how do you train that feeling? You might know the notes, but does that automatically give you that feeling of feeling? I don't have perfect pitch, but it's taken me a while to understand that feeling of going from chord in the key to another chord in the key. Does that happen also for perfect pitch?
Yeah, it does. It does. But it's kind of funny because I think that a lot of us who have perfect pitch, well, I can't speak for everyone out there, but for me, I think that it's hard for me to think of things as shapes.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Okay.
Because I'm so, my inner ear, my inner brain is like, so focused on, those are those notes and those are those notes and that sort of thing. It's like sort of, so that makes learning patterns and licks and things like that a lot harder, because my brain kind of takes a still photo of what that is. So like if I hear like a lick over C minor or something like that, that I think is really cool, and maybe it has like a lot of chromatic approach tones and things like that in it, I am probably going to have, depending on how complicated the lick is, I'm going to have a really hard time transposing that lick.
Really?
Because my brain wants to hear it the way it heard it first.
So when somebody says to you, okay, learn this in 12 keys, that's a bigger undertaking then.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now melodies, like if it's a simple melody, that's easier to transpose because like where the melody's going and stuff like that. But licks are, patterns and stuff are very I guess like more finite than that. They're the kind of more like the raw elements of like your soloing and stuff like that. And so being able to transpose those licks is like for someone like me is really hard. And like when I was in lessons with Tiger, I remember really struggling with that. And Tiger was like, I've never seen somebody who's had that much trouble with with transposition, because with patterns, because Tiger is like totally like a patterns guy, like right. Just like that's him, that's what he does. But me, I'm more of a feel guy, and so a lot of times and it doesn't make this right or anything, because I should be able to play whatever lick in whatever key, but like if I'm in, so if I learned that lick in C minor, but then I played later that day, I played a tune in let's say F minor, well, that lick might not just get played. It just might not even show up until there's a C minor chord. So licks are attached to the keys that they're in, rather than them being movable.
Mozart was very much like that himself. He chose keys for his compositions very specifically because they had to be in that key, and the music was that way because it was the key he chose. Now, let's see. I want to get to Over the Edge before we end. So can you talk a little bit about the album, Over the Edge, your collaboration with Aaron, and some of the songs you wrote for that album?
Yeah, so I have 4 tunes on the album. I have Over the Edge. That was actually, going back to the accessibility part, that was a tune that was dictated to someone else. And so, Aaron redid the chart to make it look better. So I never actually wrote that tune by myself. I wrote that when I was in Harmony 3, honestly. I wrote that as a student. And it ended up being like a tune that we play quite a bit. So I have that tune, and then I have, let's see, I'm Nikhil, I'm blanking. I have Feelings of Summer.
That's hilarious.
I have Feelings of Summer on the album, which is like a jazz rock tune. And then I have another tune that I wrote in 2013. It's called Beantown Bop.
Okay.
And that's like kind of my first attempt, I guess, at jazz counterpoint.
Yeah.
There's some cool things going on in there. And then I've got, oh gosh, what's the 4th one? I've got one more. I'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah.
I'll think of it in a minute.
No problem.
So yeah, it's really just, Aaron and I, just kind of collaborating with, he would send me tunes and, that he wrote, and Aaron, did the rest of the writing for the album. And, he would send me things and say like, hey, what do you think of this? Do you like this? Do you like that? We would go over.
I never did this with Aaron's one, but can you say a few words about Aaron as a player?
Aaron's a good player, but I think he's a little too critical of himself, and I know that we all have that issue.
Yeah, I love Aaron's playing. I think he's great.
He's a good player, and he can play. What's good about Aaron is he can play, all the instruments. I mean, he can play alto, he can play soprano. His love, of course, is the tenor. He really loves the tenor the most, but he can play any of the horns and do a fantastic job of playing all of them. And he's
that's why I'm so excited about this album. It's got some heavyweights in it. I mean, like almost everyone is such a great player. Talk a little bit about Matt. Give Matt a little shout out, because I'm going to bring him on the show in a few weeks.
Oh, Matt's incredible. Oh my gosh. And he's just very like, seems, very, he's very approachable, and his style, like you can totally tell, like he understands the piano, like inside and out. Like he's very, very good. Like he's a really detailed.
Get this album out, man, because we need to buy it. I'm telling you. I get it. When is it released, actually?
We are still doing a couple of final edits, final mixing things, so we don't have like a hard-nosed release date.
Okay.
But you guys can expect it, out in like the next, month or two,
Fantastic.
Probably.
Well, Wayne, I mean, it's been a fantastic conversation. I learned so much. Where can we find you if people are more interested in learning about you? Where can they go?
You can check out my website, WaynePearcyMusic.com. I've got a few things up there. I need to do some more work on that website. You can go up there. I've got a couple of things on YouTube. I've got a couple of things on SoundCloud. I'm working on trying to get my online presence a little bit stronger. But you can find me. You can find me there. So that'll be, that's the best way. You can also find me on Facebook.
Right. We'll
Twitter.
have the links on the show notes page, definitely, so more people can find you and contact you. And Wayne, it's been a tremendous honor to have you on the show. I really hope you come back again. I could sit here talking to you for hours because I have more questions and I didn't get a chance to ask you them. But I got to let you run.
Oh, it's all right, man. I can talk all day. It's cool.
So, come back soon.
Oh, absolutely, Nick. Sounds great.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning into the show. We'll have all the links in the show note page. Big shout out to Wayne and to his wonderful Pearcy Gratzmiller Quintet. And we'll definitely have him on the show again. Wayne, thank you for being on the show.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you so much for having me.